So welcome everybody. This is the Texas Engineering and Technology Network inaugural monthly webinar. And we are very pleased to have three panelists from the network who are joining us today to talk about AI and machine learning. Our question master today is Ryan, who's one of the members of TETN. And the aim of this webinar is to provide information to the community, to the population as a whole, about where artificial intelligence and machine learning is today, where it is probably going to go, and more importantly, as a small business owner, how you can leverage this emerging technology. The format today is going to be a round-robin panel discussion, so each panelist will have 1 minute in turn to answer their question, and then whoever leads off, the other two panelists will have the option to expand or to go off at a tangent or to provide potentially a contradictory position or a counterpoint to that. We have 6 questions, so each panelist will have two segments they lead in, and then at the end of it, if we have any questions from the audience, we'll table those as well. So I'd like to welcome Denise, Alex, and Samir as our panelists today. And the very first question goes to Denise. So Ryan, if I can ask you to lead off with the first question.
Yeah, Denise, let's start with a good fundamental question. What is the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning?
Thank you very much, Ryan. Well, actually, and David, thank you for that question, because interestingly enough, machine learning is actually a specific type of AI. So machine learning is really the algorithms, and it uses data to learn from that data to make better predictions. Whereas then AI takes the predictions from those algorithms, and with machines or systems can wrap automation around it and imitate what a human could do. And it could augment humans rather than replace, because I want to make sure that my message is all about augmenting and not replacing humans.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that message.
I hope so.
Okay, Denise, thank you very much. Okay, Samir, next up to bat, would you like to add your comments to that one, please?
Right. So I agree with what Denise said. Basically, it's a extension of AI is actually a collection of different technologies and methodologies. This is something which is not very new. This has been in our generation since ages. We used to call it statistics back then, and we didn't have the computing power. But right now, since we have the computing power, this statistics basically has become machine learning, and machine learning is that extends into artificial intelligence in future. When you apply a machine learning logic to a system of information, that becomes artificial intelligence in the simple sense in the world, right? Like you can train your data and make a car run on a road without even having a driver run it. That's the example of artificial intelligence. But training the car to run on a road without having a driver is an example of machine learning.
Okay, good. Thank you. And that's just coming up to a minute. Okay, so Alex, over to you, sir, for any final points on that question.
Yep. So I think AI includes the whole subset from statistics all the way to machine learning. Machine learning I describe also as it contains neural nets or deep learning applications. So if you think neural nets, term for most of us don't know, but as kids, a baby will see 100 images of a spoon or a phone. Let's take a phone example. And it doesn't matter if it's iPhone or a Samsung. With enough images, the kid knows it's a phone. And then they see a next phone and they know that, hey, that's a phone. They don't have to relearn that first phone and the second phone and the third phone the same way for hours and hours on end. But the more images, the more practice, the more transfer learning they call it, then you're able to identify or do that task more efficiently. So it's that ability to take thousands of examples and apply that to your world and to whatever tasks you're doing.
Okay, good. Okay, well, thanks everyone. That was a good primer. So Ryan, Samir will be leading us off on this round. So question number 2, please.
Yeah, Samir, so what are the current applications for both of these technologies?
Okay, good question. So the current application of these technologies is each and anything which we can think of, right? From starting from the education to application of education in any field. For example, let's say, especially we are talking about the small businesses here. So let's say you have a retail shop, right? Or you have a mom and pop shop and you sell, let's say, burgers, right? And I saw this recent case study and this application of this ML there basically, where people has to update their inventory every month so that they know that they are at what date of the month there will be this product is not there in their inventory, right? So what basically the application of ML is, we can train it based on the last historical data for months and year, and we can find out, okay, exact on which date, which time, what kind of interaction you have with your customers, that leads to making sure that your inventory is not up to the date. And you can send a notification to that store manager that, okay, this date you have to fill up your inventory so that you are never in the lack of that item. That's the application of AI and ML in general.
All right. Thank you, Samir. Next up, Alex, anything to expand on that thought? All right, you're just muted. There you go.
A lot of applications. A lot of people think big data and like tabular data and how to get insights, like Amazon making recommendations, Google actually doing search terms, everything else. There's also capabilities in, for instance, defense of AI agents. So AI agents can now play games better than us on AlphaGo, play real-time strategy games, but just with enough images or playing a game and you reward it with, hey, you get 1 point for winning. You can play millions of games in the period of 2 weeks and all of a sudden have a model that can beat a human, right? And this is kind of crazy, but if you can imagine The Expanse or one of my shows that I'm a real fan of, you can literally run simulations and prepare your team for certain scenarios. And now, even special operations, SOCOM forces are doing similar things to come up with outcomes like, okay, here are all the things that can go wrong and prepare your team. So very, very powerful when you think about AI agents.
Okay, thank you. And Denise, pulling us back from Terminator and Spec Ops over to embracing AI. Over to you.
Yeah. Well, I may actually keep you there in that little sector for a second, because I think one of the coolest technologies and why I think you should embrace AI is that it can really elevate your business. A small to medium-sized business can use something called virtual assistants, which are different than chatbots. Chatbots, you type in a text, and it will then take that text and seek out keywords and then give you information back based on those keywords. Virtual assistants can actually listen to or read what you're saying, but also attempt to understand the sentiment. So it's using natural language understanding versus just NLP. And it will then, based on all these different data inputs, it can then actually give you insights, actionable insights. And so it can send a notification over to maybe the sales rep or someone else in your company that needs to connect with that individual. So it helps businesses in so many ways, and it will offload some of those mundane tasks of repetitively having to keep in contact with customers and forgetting that you potentially have to do that. Instead, it'll continuously do that because they don't sleep, they don't take vacation, they don't, they're not sick, and they can then continue that conversation flow with those customers. And that's super helpful for small to medium businesses today.
Thank you. Okay. So that's given us a good primer leading into what the technology can do. So let's go to the third round. And Alex, we'll ask you to start this round off. And Ryan, if you can ask the question, please.
Yeah, so we've done, like David said, we've done the current. Where do you think these technologies will be in 5 years?
I think if you take Tesla as an example, just in the last 2-3 weeks, they've activated self-driving beta, which means the car will turn left and right for you at stop signs, etc. Every single time a person takes over and steers, that memory is captured for some human labeler to assess if that's something they want to incorporate in a model. So if you think about augmenting businesses, for instance, I think naturally interacting with voice, doing something like Salesforce.com with just like voice memos, signing actions just while you're going to work, and like seeing dashboards, minority report type stuff, I think is where it's going.
So we're guilty before proven innocent. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. And the
Denise.
next one, Denise.
Yeah, so I really like the way or the direction that Alex took that answer, because in essence, if you think about it, it can do almost, and it will be able to do in 3 to 5 years, anything that our mind will allow it to do. But with the hope that we're continuing to augment the human. So in the instance where he mentioned Tesla and being able to change, interfere, intercept the direction that Tesla would potentially turn, then in the same concept with virtual assistants, being able to jump into any part of that conversation and take over as a human is going to remain key and important. So I think in end where you're going to see it is still crazy doing things that we can't even imagine today, but still allowing humans to intercept and make changes or adopt or adapt to at any given time within that process.
Cool. Okay. So lots of new things in the next 5 years for sure. Okay. Thank you. And so that's gone round everybody. So we're back to.
No, we have Samir
Wait,
still.
no,
I
not
think.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Samir.
Samir, my bad. Sorry. Go on, Samir.
Yeah, my answer actually is a little different than Alex and Denise. I don't agree there will be any new weird technology that will come up due to AI. We are in a phase where we have built a framework where we will just develop what we have more, right? For example, autonomous driving. Right now, we have in the cars, we will have trucks. We might have boats who will be doing the autonomous driving. Mobile phones, right? Like we have camera which can flip both sides. We'll have camera which can do in iPhone, you do the live photos, right? It will be something which can do live editing in the photo as well, because Samsung is launching same kinds of camera. Xiaomi is launching same kind of camera. This is like always, this is the discussion with any technology which is out there, that in the 5 years it is going to change the world, but it never happens, right? Just remember the 5 years ago, how we had our first, the iPhone that we have and what we have right now. It's almost similar, right? We just have changed the shape of the phone, right? And changed the processing speed. So right now we are still in a phase where we need higher processing speed to make our data do more with what we are doing right now.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So it's got potential, but we need more processing.
So can I ask a question since we're able to debate a little? So Samir, in regards to that, are you talking more around, now that we're offering the 5G network, so you are expecting that we're going to see potentially larger processing in that respect?
Actually, again, the answer is twofold, right? You need data to do any kind of data science, right? And to do data science, there is n number of steps that you need to do, which is right from the data engineering, data wrangling, EDA, then define the process and then do the data science, right? The problem is right now, the internet users around the world, they still operate in 3G and band of 2Gs, right? Which is around 70% of the user. With the StarNet and Starlink up, it will increase the bandwidth of 5G, and then we might be able to jump onto 6G and 7G in the next 5 years, because that is, which is clearly laid out plan there, we will grow. And as and when we are generating more data, we have to generate the computer systems also. The laptop which we are using, or any one of you is using, it has i7, let's say i7 9 generation, 13 generation, right? The problem is we haven't changed the laptop structure since we had it, like let's say whenever the first laptop was developed. Did we change anything there? No, not yet. But we are changing the processing speed, right? So we need to be able to handle that much data which we have and make that supercomputer stay very small so that we can do any kind of processing. Yeah, autonomous driving, that is possible, but it took Tesla at least 10 years to learn how to do that thing, right? Amazon does the best recommendation engine in the world, but it took them 20 years to reach there. Facebook, again, does a good job in recommending what next product or next reel you have to watch on Instagram and TikTok. And they're still learning it, which is they started it 3 years ago. So it's like right now we are in a process where we are just learning what data we can do. You all have seen about Web3, NFT, crypto, right? Does it make sense? Everybody is saying like Web3, the success chance is 2%. Crypto success chance is 5%, right? Problem is, these are the stepping stones. There might be, based on this technology, we will build product after 5 years, 10 years, which can be useful for us. So we are in a phase where we are just building the frameworks around different technology so that we can understand actually what we want to do with it. Do we want a system which can play a better game than human? Does it add any value to our society? I don't think so. And this is my personal opinion, because I don't think anybody is playing better computer game will add value to our society. But can there be a system which is like, let's say, automated HR system? You just apply for the job, all the interview and everything process done with the VR and AR, and you get the final job offer within that day. Can that add the value to society? Of course, yes, because it will reduce on your hiring time to a day and it will reduce on the cost. But are we there yet? The answer is no, because we don't have the capability to have store that data, process that data, and then make a framework around it so that nobody is saying that, oh, you are stealing the data, or you are selling our data to different companies. We don't have a framework around that.
Okay. All right, Alex, I noticed in the chat you were talking about some something called Edge ML. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so edge compute is like when you have a Tesla that has all the models sitting on the device. The training occurs offsite. And if you can imagine, even doing car detection, you have probably tens of millions, if not trillions of images now with all the models of cars, right? Well, the model itself is deployed on the car so you can interact. So compute's getting smaller. So to Samir's point, I think, more and more capabilities, even voice detections being put on something that doesn't need Wi-Fi. And there's some powerful capability if you think about, there's an Airbus concept, for instance, that has a pilot and an air taxi. So Dubai, as well as the Middle East, are coming up with air taxis. Well, I don't see it inconceivable one day where someone's not even in the cockpit view, like someone like you is flying, and any pilot in the world can dial into your air taxi one day, right? And maybe that's a little extreme, but they're definitely doing unmanned stuff on the defense side. So if you think about maybe there's a person, but that person has 2 years of experience with a standby pilot with 30 years experience in the cockpit. Think about all the things you could do if you had the edge compute as well as the capability and dial in real time to these experts all over the world. The world becomes a very interesting place. And I'll expand on one more point. Like, there's probably going to be a lot of interesting concepts created. If you can create rules around something and an equation around something, you can machine learning it. So like, what if a kid could go design a Tesla with their voice, or a model of a robot like R2D2, and up pops 20 different models, right? You can do artwork now, but what if you could do designs on engineering? That fast tracks a lot of innovation concepts in the world, where maybe the kids are making millions of dollars at 6 to 10 years old because they just have people like us fueling their ideas and giving our expertise to some of these people who have the best of ideas, right? So fun world to think about.
So it's slightly different from the lemonade stand then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's an interesting place for us to go. So the Edge ML is actually putting the processing on the platform, not in a central repository.
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's we're doing good for time. Let's go now to the next round of questions, and back in our batting order then. Denise, you've got this question.
You're lucky you have predetermined questions, because I have all kinds of philosophical questions to these guys. Anyway, I do. Samir said something that I thought was a super interesting place to take this. But Denise, so yeah, what businesses can, like, I want to expand on this a little bit. What businesses can benefit from these technologies? And because you've already kind of answered that on some level, so the expansion to that question is how. I think more examples of how they could benefit from a lot of these technologies would be interesting.
Yeah, I think where most people have the challenge, whether you're small, medium, or large business, is not really selecting which tools to best use, but actually implementing them so that they're successful. The failure rate is still higher today than the success rate when implementing AI solutions. So when you do that, I think it's really going to have to be about building a culture around artificial intelligence. Now, this is my personal motivation in everything that I do. And so it's my own message about building culture around artificial intelligence, because if we don't learn how to adopt and adapt to artificial intelligence, which means we have to educate our employees that we're not replacing you. We're actually just augmenting. We're going to take those mundane tasks that you've been working on, we're going to automate them, and we're going to let you pivot and use the skill sets that you have today, plus the skill sets that we're going to teach you that you're going to need 3 to 5 years down the road, and that'll still make you relevant. And we're going to allow you to start to be a little bit more challenged and do some fun and exciting things that will actually add to the bottom line revenue stream by innovating with new products or service offerings. I think that's where we really need to spend a lot of focus on, is making sure that you're implementing, but in order to do or have a successful implementation is really to build a culture by educating everyone and challenging them and teaching them, and just having them step outside of their comfort zone, because we're having to do that anyway. So give them the tools to do that rather than trying to replace them.
Yeah, I love that answer. As a business consultant and leadership coach, yeah, that culture answer is spot on. As far as educating them, is we're not replacing you, we're enhancing you, essentially. Like when you were telling that story, I remember taking statistics in undergrad and taking it in grad school. And it was funny because undergrad, you had to do it all like by hand. Grad school, you got to do computers and calculators. I was like, yay, this is amazing. It was just as long and complicated because the intent changed. What we were doing with the answers changed. The information came quicker, but the questions that we had to solve or answer were much more complicated. But we could do that because we have the technology to assist us. So that's what memory that struck when you were telling that story.
Okay, thank you. So Samir, if you want to add on to Denise's statement, please.
Right. So yeah, I absolutely agree with Denise on how this small businesses and the most difficult part is implementation of the logic which is out there. There is one more very much familiar word in the artificial intelligence community, that is robotic process automation, which we call RPA, basically. So I'll just give you an example. I was working as a consultant for American Heart Association, and there we did implement an RPA technology just to make sure that they're right from the hiring process till the employee onboards. It used to take around like 8 to 10 days just to do that work, and we made it sure that it happens in a 24 hours to 36 hours with all the notification messaging and all those things sent. And earlier people were very skeptical about it, that it might reduce their whole job, like they might become irrelevant, but actually it helped them get more time to do the work that actually matters to the organization, rather than just sending out email or filling out their I-9 and W-4 and W-2s and all those forms. So yeah, like if AI has real application where there is mundane task, and if we can automate those tasks, it makes sure that the person who used to do mundane tasks will now get more time, and with more time they can actually add on to your revenue rather than just adding on to your cost.
Okay.
Speak in my language.
Yeah, I'm right there.
And so we've gone into more about implementation. Alex, anything you want to add to that thought?
Yeah, I think just companies who are starting with AI as their standard operating procedures, I mean, they have such a competitive advantage. If you think about big companies that are slow moving and they have to implement, I've seen SAP, for instance, try to do Humana and AI and all this other stuff, but it's very slow. There's no reason why, for instance, reporting couldn't be voice interactive. Like, again, that Minority Report example, it just takes someone to do it, one person, right? So if you look at the implementation, I mean, all companies will always get more efficient over time. And that's something we have to all think of. OpEx will improve, but what can you do to add more value so you can start charging a premium for other services and other offerings? So value creation will get more pronounced, I think, over time. Something as simple as, I'll share a screen real quick. I was driving, so I drive Uber every now and then, almost as to see what the market feels on certain areas of understanding AI. So if you can see my screen, you can see this one, right? I had someone say, hey, come up with any image, and DALL-E 2 created art of an elephant under a tree drinking coffee, right? And something like that, you can imagine for artwork. I mean, someone could do that for marketing and not have to do anything. But you can imagine a video could be created completely by AI one day if artwork is already possible, right? Something we didn't think was possible 3 years ago is possible today. Imagine 5 years from now, right?
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that is everybody on that round, correct? I didn't miss them. All right, so Samir will kick off the next round, and Ryan's going to ask the question. But one of the things I want to just add to this question is there a specific business, a specific niche, or a specific market segment who really would, and again, think about our client base of small to medium businesses, who really would get huge leverage from AI? We've talked about business in general, but is there a specific niche? So as we talk this through, is there a specific niche that you would really be, pushing this for? So Ryan, back to you, sir.
Yeah. So the question is, like, what's the most efficient way to implement these technologies for small businesses? And then piggyback off what David said.
Right. So actually, it's a two-part question, right? The first question, to answer your question, Ryan, to implement these technologies, first people need to understand what are their requirements, right? AI sounds cool, ML sounds cool, but do you actually need it, or are you ready to have it in your business, right? I have seen clients who want to, there were oil clients out of the Midwest, and they wanted to have a system which can measure when the chemical will be low in their wells, and they wanted a notification system. And they said, like, yeah, we have the historical data, but in general, they didn't have any historical data. They had pen and paper filled data, which will take at least 6 months to a year and employ 3 people on a job so that they can manually enter everything, right? Then we have to find out whether it is logically possible to find out whether the chemical displacement in the oil well will make sense or not, right? So AI and ML makes this is the coolest thing. Everybody wants to be there, but does your business actually require, or do you even have a problem statement to start with, right? And if you have that, implementation usually depends on what kind of IT infrastructure you have. And right now with the low code automation and simple blocks of code, people can do it on their own also. They don't need any specific knowledge to do AI and ML simple application. If you are a small to medium company, you will have a guy who might be working in the IT. That person might know more about your infrastructure, and as a business leader, you can tell them, okay, this is what I want to do, and they can do a low code automation before making a decision that, okay, I need to have this full-fledged solution onto my system. To answer David's question, what is the current biggest problem in this industry is attrition rate, hiring and firing culture, right? People are joining a company and then they are leaving the company next day, right? So, and the cost of rehire is around 200% right now, because the new candidate whom you are going to hire, you have to train them to be able to do that job. Are companies ready for it? Small and medium companies, they don't have huge margin between their profit and loss. They don't have a backing of huge investors who can put in more and more money as and when you need. So the problem is the best application of AI and ML, which we have seen in the recent past, is knowing your people based on the AI and ML configuration and understanding what are the requirements of your employees so that you can nurture them better, you can hire them better, and at the end manage them better so that you can retain them, right? The problem is we always think of, let's do the retention, but we never think that, are we hiring the right person, or are we creating a culture where the right person can sit in and stay for a long time? And this is what you can get with the AI and ML. And there are various tools which are out there which can tell you okay, this is your company culture. This is how that person looks in. Whether they fit with each other or not, that's what you need to find. And that's what the biggest problem is in the industry right now.
Okay. So using AI to enhance the human condition, not to replace the human condition.
Yeah.
Okay. Never thought about that. Okay. Alex, are you going to take us into Terminator territory, or are you going to be all soft and fluffy again?
We're going to be soft and fluffy with maybe a little bit of that. But I think at the end of the day, think about 10x productivity or a tenth of the cost. So I was in an interview once with Fetch Robotics, and they asked about some of the robotic stuff I worked on, and $200,000 is what you must have done it for. I'm like, $20,000, right? So if you use some of these AI tool sets and crowdsourcing and gig economy type of mindset, you can pull people all over the world who want to develop and work on cool stuff. So that's a huge OpEx savings. And the culture piece is how do you use AI to actually absorb the culture? And as soon as something's going wrong, like imagine emotional health in the workplace or cultural fit when someone has an argument, all these little tools of using AI for even training can supplement and help that environment. I think to the question earlier is, where's the biggest opportunity? I think if you look at education and training, that's something I'm very passionate about. I started in high school doing a computer vision application, and I taught a course in New York City last year. The kids can pick it up quick, and they might be the ones teaching the adults. I'll just put it that way, because there's not one thing you show them that they can't pick up in a week. And they were doing their own model development of a neural net on themselves, an image of a neural net for Alex versus Denise in 1 week training time, 20 hours, right? So there's huge opportunity here, but if they grow up with the tools, they're going to expect it, right? And then the workplace culture will change over time just by them implementing what they know is best practice. So that's something to think through. It's like, it's harder for the, end of career person to pick up some of these skill sets, but if you have someone younger in charge of some of these tasks and give them the responsibility with the responsibility of a director of a company, like they will shine and beam with pride to help everyone in the company learn it, right?
Okay. All right. I hadn't thought about that. Okay. So we're much more human focused than I'd expected on this call. Okay. Interesting. So final round of questions.
No, Denise has the answer still.
Oh, sorry. I've done it again, haven't I? I'm sorry. Denise, you are the one who should be answering this.
No, I actually was going to say that we're all, Alex said, just wait until our kids are actually doing it and teaching us, when in actuality, we're seeing that already with the Gen Zers, right? Generation Zs, they're already pushing us to do things more innovating and more intelligent than we've ever seen before, because they've come on board, already been in the electronic world. And so they are already starting to evolve what skill sets and jobs look like 3 to 5 years down the road. And as they do that, yes, we do need to continue to educate. And we, as the older generation, need to also take an interest in educating ourselves so that we are relevant in the next 3 to 5 years. Because I do believe with Samir that a lot of this stuff is here, but along with Alex, I think there are things that we still could improve upon that we're going to see that are going to make a difference. Like if we take it back just to voice virtual assistants. I mean, pretty soon you'll have people that can, or voice assistants who can actually coach someone when they onboard. So they can go through the training with them and do all of the training with them. I mean, it's going to be really, really cool. But unless we, as the older generation, start to adopt it, then we're going to be left behind. And so I think, again, the businesses are really any business. I do agree that you have to have the business, the problem statement, as Samir said, but the problem statement could be as simple as you just can't nurture a lead or nurture a client. That's when you probably need some sort of solution, whether it's just an automation solution or a true AI powered solution.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Now, the last round of questions. I apologize for getting out of sequence. So we'll start this round with Alex and Ryan, back to you.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of answered this a little bit, but we can go in a little more detail. What businesses you really should either avoid AI or ML or just not do it at all?
Yeah, well, I'll go to ethical AI. So we in the US have probably the strongest, one of the strongest ethics and basis is even in the defense world, everything's human in the loop, right? So even if there's a point where someone uses a drone for something nefarious, it's like the human has to pull a trigger and, basically accept the responsibility and go to court if it's on their shoulders to do something wrong. There's a lot of places in the world where that's not true. So I think in certain areas, it's like, well, how do you counter some of these nefarious cyber hacking capabilities? Well, you have to have the better cyber AI, right? So it's like a arms race, and it's like, you don't want to have certain places like nuclear weapons being threatened. It's like, what are the areas where it could get to that level of impending doom, and put some rules around it on a very high level. It's like, no, you shouldn't build nuclear weapons, or you shouldn't, get to a higher level of cybersecurity where one system can hack everyone in the world at the same time, just post a video like V for Vendetta style on everyone's screen, So I think there's certain things like that. Just, I think the US is thinking of, I'm not sure if every country in the world is, right?
Okay. Next up then would be Denise.
Yeah, so I would say that I would bring up ethics as well as Alex did, because I do believe that most businesses, so I will restate my statement that I made earlier, maybe not all businesses, because those that potentially could create nuclear, bombs and those types of mad weapons, we don't want them to have the ability to generate artificial intelligence or use artificial intelligence in their world. But the reality is most small to medium, large size businesses could most certainly utilize AI in some facet or form. But it does get back to ethical AI. And it's not just being able to sue the person who created that AI. It's really about creating AI that's unbiased. Because right now, one person could create a AI robot that, for whatever reason, that robot, because that person doesn't love ice cream, they are not going to love ice cream. Then that's going to taint every conversation that they have about ice cream when they respond. And you don't want that. That's on the most granular level so everyone can conceptually understand. But the reality is you've got to have an unbiased and an ethical, and to that definition and or requirements, you need to make sure that the right people are actually utilizing the solutions, as Alex said. And then I'll let Samir finish out, because he really, he's got a great point that he made earlier in which ones shouldn't be using when it gets down to the nuts and bolts of it, and not necessarily the ethical aspect of it.
Okay, nice handoff. Samir, thank you.
Right. Before starting that, I just want to say I'll sound off very tangential on this. I don't understand the ethics of AI that people are setting, right? AI is at the end of the day a man-made thing. A human, a person sits behind a computer. He writes the code, he or she writes the code and then deploy it at the end of for the end users, right? For example, let me give you a very, I'll say it's a very bad example, right? Let's say Russia is attacking on Ukraine, right? And they made a bomb which goes to the Ukraine, and then 10 people lost their leg, right? Now, Ukraine wants to develop something by which those people should be able to walk again. Now, for Russia, is it ethical that, oh, we wanted to terminate those people and they wanted to create something which will make them run again? And for Ukraine, is it fair that, oh, we want our people to run again when we never want this thing to happen again in the world? This concept, why I'm saying this is something which has been done by Israel, right? Which they call it Iron Dome. They created a system by which any nuclear missile, any kind of missile which intercepts into their atmosphere, in the next 10 seconds, it will throw a missile from the Israel, and they will terminate those other missiles from the other countries which are coming into their ecosystem or the atmosphere, right? Now, the thing is, ethics is still, it becomes very political debate when we say, okay, let's say this is a bipartisan country and we want this kind of a culture, and the other country, other party says, we want this kind of a culture. At the end of the day, AI is something which is governed by a person, right? If you're a person who is making the AI logic, if that person is ethical, every other thing is makes sense. It will be ethical, right? It will not be political. Now, the second thing is at which places we should not apply AI. The correct answer is we even don't know it yet, because right now we are in a phase where, as Alex was mentioning, where kids will create art and everything. The kids are creating the art. It is NFTs are the big thing in the market, right? There's kids are creating YouTube Shorts video, right? There is AI logic which makes their video push again and again to us so that we view more and they get ad revenue and everything. 16-year-olds are becoming millionaire and all the other things without even completing their high schools. So are we turning to a economy which will be more like everybody is doing gig economy and there is no structural benefit to it? I think it is good for the society. Why anybody will follow a norm? There will be people who will be specialized in a certain area, like there will be let's say aerospace engineers, right? and they might be making the TikTok at the end of the day, at the end of their day, that okay, we are dancing, we are chef also, and we can be aerospace engineer at the same time. So AI, and we don't know, like everything is happening due to AI, because AI made the creator economy go boom, right? But now how we will know where we need to stop it? uh, for some it might be ethical, for some it might not be unethical. The current thing is we have to just wait, and we have to see like what is the extent of development that we can do. As I have mentioned earlier also, we don't know about the framework yet, where we want the system to go. HR industry is doing something for HR, chemical industry is doing something for the chemical. We all saw the COVID, right? Corona in 2020, right? And we developed vaccines in like 8 month, 9 month time, right? Would it have been possible if we didn't had the AI in the machinery? But everybody opposed the machinery, AI, and the belt line chain when it came into the existence. So, do we know the extent of its usage? No. Chemical can be used for chemical warfare also, right? But we used it to develop a vaccine. So, that depends on the person, that depends on the scientist, how ethical that person is. Corona is again like it is debated that is it man made? Is it a accident? Whatever happened, right? Still, it was a something which happened in a lab. There were people involved in it. So, ethics can never be political, and nobody can tell you, oh, this is ethical, this is not. It always depends on the person and the intent by which and for which they are doing.
Okay,
Well-
Alex. Sorry, hang on, Denise. Alex raised his hand a second ago. Alex, are you in the queue to respond?
Yeah. I mean, definitely comment. I mean, if you look at the gig economy mentioned from Samir's, COVID taught us one thing, which is, hey, maybe I don't need that corporate job to survive and actually have a good living, right? So who's to know that maybe 3 people don't have side gigs that are making $15,000 a month each? Wouldn't you say to your 16-year-old or your 12-year-old, hey, just do that and then figure out what you want to do in life and learn and travel the world? Like, one can argue that that might not be a possibility. I think one thing to remember is some of these corporations, and including governments, right? What's the stance on AI? If you're using it for control, when the whole global economy is embracing some of these activities and ways of living, it could be dangerous for the survivability of that corporation, for instance. So those who don't allow for this flex economy and some of these tool sets and the highest levels of innovation to purview and permeate in their organizations won't attract the top talent. So you have to think about, like, it's actually on the survivability of that company. And so what does the next generation company look like? Who's to know that the people on this call don't have a DAO or decentralized autonomous organization that makes more and has more people in the work that does way more impactful stuff for the world economy than any company would today or any government would today, right? It's totally possible in the next 10 years. So one of the things I think we all should think of is, like, what are the capabilities? Where's the trend? And don't fight the trend. It's like swimming upstream. What can we do to embrace it, to leverage these tools to attract the top talent in a global nature, right? And that might mean the governments look different, and that might mean corporations look different, but something I'm very passionate about, which is, how do you create for the average person, even imagine just do data labeling around the world. There's a lot of people that would love to make $5 an hour, right? The US kids, probably not. So, but you could have a 20x the speed of industry and innovation by leveraging global talent. You can't tell me that that's not a good thing for the world, right?
Okay, Denise?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you talk about that, Alex, I mean, really, it is about making sure that we are, as a business individually, that we are innovating. Because if you're not innovating in the grand, to summarize everything that you said, which was great and tie it up in a bow, Alex, you've got to be innovating as an organization. And if you're not innovating, you're going to either be out or you're going to be on the way out in 3 to 5 years. And innovating can be just small little steps. What 5 years looks like, I don't really know, but I can say this for a fact: we can't just sit back and watch it and wait. We've got to be actively participating in it and ensuring that we are embracing it in a way that we can help change the trajectory of AI to ensure that we do have good ethics. We have crimes today with punishments. If you do something that is unethical, that is so unethical that it goes against the the laws that we've created, then you go to jail or you are executed or whatever that punishment may be. And we need, if we're going to have ethics, we need to have those same type of penalties. There's got to be an auditing system and an ability to penalize those businesses who then sway off of that ethical line and go into the doomsday version.
Okay. Certainly went. Any more comments on that one before we close this, Alex? You know,
I'm good.
good. Okay. We certainly went into some areas that I wasn't expecting. I must admit, ethics, doomsday, HR in a day, all that stuff. I was not expecting that. But I did realize there's one question that we didn't ask from a business owner's perspective, which really we should have done. How much? How much is this going to cost me as a business owner to implement AI?
Yeah, that depends on your business statement. Like, do you want to change your process or do you want to change your task, right? If you're looking at a task, it might be, for example, I'll give you just, let's say you are trying to generate more leads, right? There's a tool known as Luna out there. It costs $30 per month, right? It will write a message for you. It will tell them, it will send LinkedIn connection request for you. It will send them the follow-up email also for you. And it just costs $30. But let's say you are building a whole sales team where you need to make product demos and all those things, right? Then you might be using 10 different tools altogether, which might cost you, let's say, $100,000 or $2 million a month, depending on the volume and the task and the process that we're talking about here.
Okay, it's a pretty big range. Anybody else want to chime in on the cost base? Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people start integrating it today, I mean, I could generate a video as well as a summary with AI tools and take 3 pages of stuff and compress it to 3 bullets and translate to 20 languages in less than 10 minutes. So you think about like, how much does it cost? That might cost $2 or less. And by the way, I use OpenAI a lot. I wrote a paper in 30 minutes just to see if I could, 5-page paper. And it cost me like $1.50 that month, right? So $1.50 or $2, like, you know, is it worth it? There's going to be all these off the shelf APIs that you can tap into that are similar. $3 a month, $20 a month, right? And once these tools get starting to interwoven together, it's like, do you want the $100 a month that generates you $10,000 of value? Right. Look at the payback. Okay, well, I pay back in a few days. So be it. I think that should be the question. So I do portfolio management as well as run the company. It's like, what's the payback to use some of these tools? What's the cost? And if it lets you reach out to the market and 5x your revenues in 3 months because you're using some of these lead generation tools and it only costs $100, the business is worth $5,000, do it, right? And that's with everything, voice gestures, voice to text, robotics, whatever you can do to, you know, even having the people just hire someone to implement all these cool tools, they'll have a blast, right? It'll cost them $150,000 for the person, but I guarantee the OpEx savings are $200,000, $300,000, and then the value added offerings will be 5 times what you're doing today. You know.
Okay, interesting. And Denise, any closing comments on that one?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, you know, when Alex used the term API, it can sound scary to the common business owner and most of the people that we're talking to today. Don't let that fear of API or technology term that you don't understand really innate or prevent you from doing anything in the world of AI, because I do believe that there are enough Alexes and Samirs and myself that can help you determine what solutions are good for you, help you understand definitions better. But the reality is we have to embrace it. You may not have to do it with open arms, but you got to do it because it's already here. And it's just really a matter of how do we help change the trajectory, or at least create an environment or a culture where it is an augmentation to humans and not a replacement for.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so before we go to the floor, see if any of the attendees have any questions. Ryan, do you have any sort of summary comments you want to share?
Summary, not as far as summary comments, no. But if no one else has questions, I might have one.
Okay.
I bet he has a lot.
I do actually, yeah.
So let me just add to our guests who are attending. If there's any questions from the floor, please just use the raise hand feature and I'll be more than happy to invite you to ask a question to the panel. So while we're seeing if any questions come in, Ryan, over to you. You have a question, sir.
Yeah, so my background is not in y'all's background as far as in like, technology engineering. Like it is in, I have a master's in counseling and psych, I have a law degree, and I do like cultural leadership, like a lot of mindset stuff, right? So I was super interested in the fact that y'all went so human focused, like David was, with this conversation. And one of the things that Samir mentioned made me think about it when it was talking about AI and it essentially being, a reflection of the human that developed this, right? And that's always a philosophy I've had, because humans can't help but somehow put their biases in the technologies that we develop, right? And so like I'm huge into stoicism, and it made me think like philosophically, how can we, or is it even possible for us to develop AIs that don't have a bias in them, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, philosophically, like if I'll say it logically, it is not possible to develop an AI which doesn't have a bias. And I have master's degrees in AI. I have 8 years, like I have been working into this segment for a very long time.
Mhm.
Why I know this is each and every algorithm which is out there that will be developed by a human, right? AI cannot develop AI, right? Even if it does, there was someone who developed that AI, right? As a human, I will have some bias. It's not possible for any human to not have bias, be it the king of UK or the watchman sitting in some third world country out there. Everybody will have bias, some kind of bias, right? The problem is how much biased are you, right? And how much your bias can affect a business decision. For example, let's say I have to develop something like a leadership program for your leadership team, right? There I cannot have a bias because I don't know any of those people, right? I am creating a formula which will just tell me that, okay, this person needs this kind of codes based on some interaction. So how we usually reduce the biases, we train our algorithm with lot and lot of data, right? And each of that data is randomly collected. So we can create the algorithm, but we don't know what the source of data will be, right? And then we recalibrate our algorithm, and we change it over the time. That's how we reduce the bias. But can it be absolute zero? The answer is no. It tend to touch the zero over a long period of time, statistically speaking, right? It will tend to touch zero, but it will never be zero.
Okay. So we can get rid of bias, but it's going to be an iterative process and it will take time. So
right. So yeah, you cannot get rid of the bias, but you have to know like what kind of bias you have entered in your system, right? Which we usually call it errors, right? You might have seen like any doctor or any system which predicts you, they will say that this is a prediction, right? Prediction always comes with a range. It might be 90% true. It might be 95% true. So what that 10% and 5% is actually our bias, which goes as an error, right? Because we have trained it with a lot of data, and then that data, whatever biased we have fed and whatever the difference we got from the data, that becomes our error. And then only we say, okay, this is 90% accurate, this is 80% accurate. And that is more than enough, because as a human, we don't know even like 10% accuracy. If we are getting something which is 90%, 80% accurate, I'll be happy to take that bet any day over not knowing what is going to happen tomorrow.
okay.
David, I would have to say, when you first asked that question, I was shaking my head. Yes, we can create AI without bias, but listening to Samir, he is right. I mean, the reality is, as long as you know that there is maybe 0 to 10% of the prediction that may be, a little bit of bias, but even let's just take the example of, image detection and which images have a circle. Right? That circle could just be slightly oblongated, and to one human, it may look like a circle, and to the next, it may look like an oblong circle, which then doesn't match the actual definition of a circle. And therefore, Samir is right. in that instance, it is subjective or objective based on whoever is looking at that data to determine, or who created that algorithm or that model that would then detect that data, because they're looking for the actual data points to bring them in, because the data is only as good as the data you collect. So you've got to, and the data is collected by a human in the original aspect of it, in the original form of it. So good point, Samir.
Yeah, so I want to add a few comments as well, and I'll do a little demo as well. At the end of the day, I think you want bias in certain essences. Like, for instance, you could write an article, right? OpenAI right now can summarize this article in less than, 10 seconds, I think that was. What if you could do this with a warm tone, a more direct tone on an email generation, right? There's no reason to say that I could not actually use biases to my advantage and have different models for different things.
Yes.
I give the example, there's a dogfight challenge where there's literally in a simulation of aircraft zeroing in behind someone, and this one AI beat Lockheed Martin's AI, and at a company I worked at. So I could put my AI in the most aggressive attack pilot. I can also put on the most aggressive getaway pilot. So if I had that switch, I actually want a bias. I want to like survivability, put it on the max. That might make me pass out because it'll pull G's that I couldn't as an Air Force pilot handle. But it's about knowing what the biases are, what the training data is, and then using it to your advantage. Even an example I gave of summarizing the article, I've written articles and I'm like, oh, that AI thing sounds way better than me, right? And I literally can write call to action in OpenAI, and I'll generate a marketing spin on stuff. And it's like, with a human, it's like, ask yourself, there's biases. Can 3 people write the same thing on a summary in the same exact way? Probably not. But people are good at aggregating all 3 into one cohesive story. And that's what we want for decision making as well.
Okay. So my take on this then, huge processing capability, garbage in, garbage out. There's still humans who are going to mess it up, either ethically or technically. So we're not out of the woods yet. We have not achieved utopia just yet.
Well, I don't think we'll ever achieve utopia.
Yeah, neither. Yeah.
Well,
And there I would agree with Samir.
Because I think you're always going to have human in, human out.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Guys, we're coming up on time. That was a really interesting panel. It definitely didn't go where I thought it was going to go, so that's great. That's a learning opportunity for everybody. So we'll close the formal part of the discussion at this point, and I'll snip the recording in a second. So I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. This was the first ever Texas Engineering and Technology Network webinar. It was on the applications of AI and machine learning. We had 3 guest panelists, Denise, Alex, and Samir, all members of the Texas Engineering and Technology Network. Feel free to reach out to them on LinkedIn, and I'm sure they would love to continue this conversation about how AI can help you in your business. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you coming on the webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.